Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and today I'm excited as I've got the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim here on the table. This is the adventure game from Modiphius, which I did cover in the past when they were doing their crowdfunding campaign. I put together a tabletop simulator play of it. It was a game overview and gameplay video, and that's exactly what this is going to be, but we're doing this on the tabletop now, plus we have every aspect of the game available, whereas in that prototype video from the past, the market, for instance, as an example, was not a part of the equation. That's way up there in the top right. We'll go over the different areas of the game board really quick at a high level as to what these different card decks are and what's kind of all set up around here. We're going to dive right into the action because I want to show you how this game flows and operates and help you make an informed decision as to whether or not this game is for you. In the very top left-hand corner of the game board, we have two decks of cards. One is the Stronghold deck, which we'll be drawing in front if we happen to land at a Stronghold location. And we also have the Wilderness deck. These icons can be found on the game board. You'll see examples of some of them in the bottom right-hand corner. There are two card organizers that come inside the box. They also have dividers as well. I have sorted them all through. You'll see some cards at the very back sticking up. When you're playing solo, the game will instruct you when you're setting up for Campaign 1, Chapter 1, to remove some cards from the equation. It's not a ton, just about 3 to 6 cards are going to be pulled out. So I pulled them out, stuck them vertical so I can just put them back in later on, and they're not going to be part of this experience. And again, that will change based on the player count. Beyond that, everything is just situated per the dividers in terms of the numbers. Let's move on to the tokens. In the game tray organizers, which are not part of the core game, these are things I purchased on the side because they're super handy for getting these tokens into one place with them being splashed all over the table. We do have in the very first one, in the white, experience tokens. In the yellowish gold, we have gold tokens. And then in the black white, we have threat tokens. Down below in the second game tray there at the very top, in blue, we have soul gems. In the yellowish green, we have plants. And in the blackish gray, we have ore. We have two more decks here on the far left-hand side. One is a status deck. You'll just go ahead and place it as is on the table. It's all in numerical order, S and then a numerical number on each of the cards. And it's also worth mentioning on the back of each of these cards, there's varying different types of backs. Don't let that scare you. Don't try to divide it up. Keep them all in order and just place them nearby. Then you have this deck here, which was called to be built based on the Campaign 1, Chapter 1 setup. We'll talk about what this is in just a moment. There are a number of decks at the top of the game board. We have the basic treasure deck on the far left. Right beside it, we have the advanced treasure deck. And to the far right, we have another item card deck, which has an anvil on it. And beside that, we have the upgrade and enchantment deck. Again, all of these decks are shuffled. And then the market decks, which were not part of my original coverage in the prototype, are actually here, of course, in the final version. On the far right-hand side, we have 3 different kinds. We have the Might Market in red, we have the Shadow Market in green, and the Sorcery Market in purple. Along the right-hand side of the game board, I have from top to bottom the Animal, Human, Undead, Daedra deck, Dungeon deck, and at the very bottom there, we have a Dungeon Challenge card, which is specific to the campaign we're in and starting with, which is Campaign 1, Chapter 1. The rest are in the box. I've already gone ahead and pre-selected the character I'll be controlling. I'll zoom in on this in a second so you can see everything around this card. But my focuses in terms of learning here is going to be illusion and enchanting, but you can build out whatever you want in the world of Skyrim, but you do get some, specific abilities that can be of benefit to you if you focus on learning certain key aspects of that character. And we've also got a couple starting things like Ragged Robes, Fists, and Potion of Minor Healing to get us started. The dashboard is set up in a similar way across no matter which character you choose, but of course, as you progress with that particular character, it's vastly going to change in how you actually operate, use it, and build it as the levels go on. We also start with 2 plants, and of course, all of our cubes are across our 3 major elements. We have health, we have stamina, and we have magicka. My special ability for this character once per game turn is Highborn. In combat, lose 1 health to regenerate all of your magicka. It's worth mentioning that there are alternative artworks on each side of the character cards. You can choose whichever one you prefer. On the game board itself, I've gone ahead and placed 2 cards, which I'll be using as reference as we go through. I'll probably zoom in on this as we walk through the first turn or so. This is going to talk about how strongholds are dealt with, how your turn actions pan out in terms of what options you have. You have your full turn sequence written out on one of these. If you flip them over, you have even more specific to the market or when you want to upgrade or enchant. So these are really good references to have, both of them handy, especially for the combat, maybe the first time you go through it. So I've got one of each here. In the bottom right-hand corner of the game board, we have the event deck, and this is where also active events are going to be housed as well as discarded events, so we'll be keeping track of them here. In terms of creating the event deck, very simple. You'll just dive right into the scenario booklet and it'll tell you exactly how to create that event deck, shuffling those cards together and placing them in a pile. Nothing needs to be done for this area in the top right-hand corner of the board, but it's worth mentioning it exists because this is going to keep track of strongholds as they degrade over time. You're going to have situations where they become unstable, which is the first column. Second column is closed, and the third one is rioting. It shows at the very bottom there exactly what those effects have for each of those locations, and there's also other iconography we'll talk about as we go along, but most of it pertains to what's available and what's possible in those locations. At this point, that's going to do it for all the different components around the game board. We obviously have dice as well, but you'll see that in action later on. There's some other aspects you'll see as we go. Plus, I haven't technically touched on the quest cards, which are the primary driver of what we're doing here. But before I do that, let's talk about the overview of the game overall. So the idea here, being that we're playing in Skyrim, is that every player is taking on the role of a hero involved in a high-stakes quest where their actions are going to mean the difference between life and death. And the game's divided across 2 campaigns of 3 chapters each inside the core box, and the decisions the players make have a distinct effect as the story goes by, making the game different every time you play it. So there is replayability here quite a bit because it'll branch off in completely different aspects based on your decisions and how things go. And each chapter is going to last between 90 and 120 minutes. They're intended to be played in order basically to form an ongoing narrative, but you can also play these independently as a one-off game, which is nice in case you don't have the ability to really dig in for a long time inside of one campaign. As a hero in Skyrim, you are a member of the Blades organization, and during the game, you're going to advance through a compelling story of conspiracies, war, and intrigue. And to win the game, you must advance through the main quest cards. Failing a main quest card doesn't mean you're going to lose the game. It's possible to be unsuccessful and still end up victorious, which is really cool. However, each chapter has a set conditions that could mean losing the game outright, and at the end of each chapter, players will face a final test. Each of these tests differs according to the chapter, of course, and it could be anything from an epic battle to a desperate race against time. Failing that test would also mean defeat for the players or the player overall. Now, when a chapter's lost, the players have the option of continuing the game, although their failure might make the next chapter more challenging. So kind of a fail-forward approach if you want to continue on and not have to repeat anything, which I do really appreciate. Heading back to the deck I touched on earlier, this is the Blades deck. It's comprised currently of 9 cards. This deck's going to remain in use throughout Campaign 1 across the chapters, so keep that in mind. Also, you're going to notice that inside this deck, the card backs will also be different. You're just going to shuffle them up and place them here. The idea here is that the deck represents other members of the Blades that are hiding in Skyrim, and during the game, players can find those Blades and gain their assistance. It's also worth mentioning that at the end of Campaign 1, once you get through a number of chapters from that very first campaign, this deck is then going to disperse itself based on the card backs across a number of other decks in the game. At this point, let's begin our journey. We'll talk about this card, 209, and we'll also jump into the very first main quest card that we have and follow that through as well. This card is going to give us kind of an introduction to what we're playing currently and also give us a heads up on any special rules if there are any. This is called Tainted Haven. It says, year 175 of the 4th era. The Great War rages across Tamriel. A group of young Blades recruits go on their first mission, a patrol around the forests of Cyrodiil. A Thalmor ambush catches them off guard and they barely escape alive. Upon returning to their camp, they find it desolated. The Thalmor have been here. Cyrodiil is not safe for them anymore. They escape to Skyrim far from the Thalmor's clutches. In Skyrim, the Reachmen have conquered Marketh. The tensions between them and the Nords are rising. Now, flipping the card over, you'll see any special rules that are indicated. In this case, being that it's chapter number 1 of campaign number 1, there aren't any special rules, so nothing extra we have to keep track of here, but expect that to change as you continue on for sure. Chapter failure here is mentioned in terms of how we lose. It says if a main quest card reaches its threat limit, the chapter is lost and we draw card 212. Now we're going to focus our attention on the main quest, and I was told to grab 4 cards out of the box, shuffle them, randomly select one of them, and I got the main quest Trap. That's how things start off for me, and as we know from Skyrim, the video game, things don't start off great. You're typically in prison or something horrible's happened to you, and you're basically, well, nobody cares about you, and you're working your way from ground zero all the way up to being a mighty hero. In this case, I'm trapped. We're going to read this. One main quest can be sitting here on the right-hand side of your player dashboard, and it has a space for up to 2 side quests at a time to be there as well. Trap card says, Narence, a traveling explorer, hires me to protect her while exploring some ruins. The place is quiet, yet it makes me feel uneasy. Deep in the ruins, she pulls a lever and a cage falls right next to me. Failing to trap me, we both silently stare at each other. Her disappointment is palpable. It only takes me one strike to defeat her. A note falls from my attempted captor's pocket as she falls. Narence, it's been too long since we last spoke, and now I come to you asking for assistance. I need you to keep some people secure in your ruins. Their names are on the back of this letter. I'll give you what you've always wanted if you do. Alright, on the back of the letter, I found a list of names of blades, mine included. Alright, so our name is on that list. She tried to take me out, and it says right now we're going to place our player figure in Whiterun, and we have a choice to make. So we end up beginning our adventure in a central space in the middle of the board. I have two options to choose from here. One says I'll recruit a mighty warrior to help me find Karnai. I can choose 2 equipment cards and then I draw 168. Option 2 is I'll reach out to someone wiser than me to help find this individual, and I can choose 2 equipment cards and I pull 170 instead. At this point, you go ahead and grab the equipment deck. You get to choose any 2 cards inside of it. There are 2 of every card in the deck, so it's about half of the amount of this deck in terms of unique items to thumb through and to choose to swap out. I could have chosen, for instance, to swap out from my ragged robes for this one instead, which would have been a benefit, but instead I decided to focus on spells. I decided on the 2 spells, Healing and Sparks, and I placed both those spells in 2 different backpack locations, but one thing that I want to make mention of is the fact that it doesn't actually take up that backpack slot. I still have 4 available. They're just positioned there for now. Card 168, Rumors at the Inn. It states the Sword of Malrash, the mountain, rests on a pedestal up where everyone at the inn can see it. He is not a blade anymore. Now he serves mead for the people of Morthal. He recognizes me and we both celebrate the reunion. He tells me he is fearful for his life. Someone has been following him for a few nights. He wants to disappear and needs my help. When a quest card does have a location marker on it, you're going to go ahead and place a colored marker on the card if you wish, and as well on the location. I typically do this to tie the 2 together, so I'm using a yellow marker in this case. Again, if you're playing with multiple players on the table, you're going to have to weigh how you use these markers. When you're playing solo, you have a lot more at your disposal. So I'm using a yellow marker here to note this ties to this quest. I placed another yellow marker out in the game world map at Morthal, and I want to mention another one that was placed earlier on during setup, which I didn't mention. Looking at the world map, we have Morthal there with 1 location marker on it that's yellow, ties into the quest card we were just talking about. Solitude up top has a red marker. You're probably wondering where that came from. That comes from the scenario booklet during setup. It's actually been there the entire time, probably blended in quite nicely, but it basically told us to place this here. This won't have any relevance until later in the chapter. That's all we know around that. And then we were also told that Marketh, way over here, is this stronghold is under the control of the king and the Reachman, so it's not accessible and it won't accept any threat tokens during this chapter and the next one. So that's something to keep in mind. And with that, we're ready to move into our very first turn within the game. It's worth mentioning that the spells that were sitting in the backpack slots are now up in the hand slots because, well, that's where I want them equipped. And it is worth mentioning the fist card that was sitting in between here, taking up both card slots, is off to the side. If the Ragged Robes ever gets replaced, that will be placed off to the side because those can come back. That's the default base level that you always have if you have nothing else. So always remember that. Don't just toss them back in the box. You have at least your fists and you have at least the Ragged Robes as a base. If you don't have those, you can't do all that much. Now, beyond that, we are going to draw an event card right now. That's going to start off the turn sequence. Let's go to the event deck and see what's in store. The event deck has all kinds of surprises for you. You might find a world quest. If you do, you place it on the left-hand side of the game board in the area where world quests are tracked. And of course, there's going to be a broader and wider ranged quest that you can check out. If you happen to find an active event card, you're going to place it in the center here. It will stay here active until another active event knocks it out of position. When it gets knocked out of position, it goes in the discard. If you happen to pull an event card that is just an event card that's not considered active, it just goes straight to the discard as you're resolving it and it's done. This event card says Conspiracy. It is not an active event, so it goes down to the discard. We'll resolve it. It says there are forces working against you. Place a threat token on each quest and then remove this card from the game. Managing threat is an important aspect of Skyrim the Adventure board game. In this case, the event card told us to place a threat token on each quest, and then we got rid of the event card. Now, we didn't get a choice in this. It's any quest that we currently have available gets a threat token. So we've gone ahead and placed one here on the only one we have, which is Rumors at the Inn. Now, in the top right-hand corner of that card, we have a 4, which lets us know that if this main quest happens to get 4 threat on it, well, that is going to be bad. And based on the special rules, you'll see chapter failure. If a main quest card reaches its threat limit, the chapter is lost and we pull a card. So we want to manage threat by potentially putting it elsewhere when possible. And there will be times from the event deck where we'll get icons for threat where we have a choice of where to place the threat. So for instance, if the event card that we had just pulled had 2 icons of threat on it, and it didn't tell us that we had to specifically place it on quests, then we would have the choice to divvy up how and where we want to put that threat. So for 2, we could decide to put 1 here, and we could have placed another one in the very first column along one of those strongholds. The only one we're not allowed to place threat on right now is Marketh, based on Campaign 1, Chapter 1, saying we cannot place threat at that location nor access it during this chapter and into chapter number 2. And as we obtain side quests in the future, that will give us another area to place threat tokens. And again, you're going to be managing when and where and how these threat tokens are placed, because they're all going to have, well, potentially nasty impacts. They're going to trigger negative conditions across either strongholds or through failure sides of some of these quests. For now, I feel pretty confident about what's going on because I'm planning to head right here for the inn right away. And once you actually get there and complete a quest, all the threat that's on it disappears. The next thing we check for is whether any roaming monsters are going to move based on the chapter rules. We would move them. We don't have anything to deal with here. We can skip on to the player using their movement to get around the game board, and I know exactly where I'm headed. By default, I have 4 movement. I'm going to use 3 of it because that's all I need to get from Whiterun up to Morthal, so my character is going to move through the roads in order to get there. If I happen to have a horse, instead of the default 4 movement, I'd have 5 movement. So you have the default movement of 4, you have the potential to have up to 5 with horses. The other option at your disposal is to spend gold to move from hold to hold and pay a gold for each adjacent hold you move through. In other words, take a look at the game board and completely strip away all of the roads and iconography for the most part. Just take a look, for example, at Whiterun and where it's located, and the fact that it's in a shaded yellowed in area, which is considered the Whiterun hold. If I want to move all the way up into this hold area up here, then I would have to count for every adjacent hold I'm moving through, which is 1 for the green one and 2 over here. This would be a cost of 2 gold to go from Whiterun, for example, all the way up to Solitude. At this point, I can choose to take an action, and there's a number of actions I can do dependent on where I am. Of course, I'm in a location with a quest, so that's the one I want to do, which is resolving a quest. That's my action. I'll be doing it in a moment. Other options you have at your disposal is you happen to be in a stronghold, you can choose to explore the town. The other option is if you're in a wilderness location, you can choose to explore the wilderness, or if you're in a dungeon location, you can explore a dungeon. So just an example of some of those on the game board, you can actually see them in the shot right now. We have a wilderness location, which are these ones here in green. This is a dungeon right here, and you guys know what strongholds look like. So now let's talk about skill checks, because that's what we're doing here as we resolve a quest. And we take a look at this area down here. It says we're trying to create a distraction. That's what I want to do thematically based on what we read earlier. We've got ourselves 3 white dice, which is going to come into the pool as a default amount. If we happen to have the illusion skill learned, we gain an additional die into the pool. If we have the legendary version of illusion, we get another die into the pool, again increasing our odds. And speaking of odds, in terms of what we can actually land on this dice, there are 3 sides that have the icon we're looking for. So across 3 dice, we need to get 2 of those icons. Now, let's say hypothetically I roll this, and instead of getting a great result like this, which would be an automatic pass, we get something like this. That is not going to work. What I can do is called pushing, and pushing allows you to spend a resource, so long as it says you can actually do it on the actual check. And based on the resource, if you have it to spend, you can gain an additional die after you roll these to roll a die and try to, push your way into success, so long as you have the resources to spend. Now, I unfortunately don't have the ability to push, so I'm just banking on whatever happens off these dice. Let's see if I am successful. No, I am not. That is going to be a fail result, so we're going to go ahead and flip this over and see what the failure result has for us. They see me. Now I'll be hunted too. We're drawing card 155 and adding it to the dungeon deck discard pile. You'll see the icon for the dungeon deck so you know exactly which deck that is, and be aware it's going into the discard pile. And then, as it states below, there's another icon here, which is the first time we're seeing this, so I'll explain it. Remember that Blades deck that I set up earlier on? The one where we can potentially get some assistance and followers from Blades individuals? Well, we just lost one of them. So again, very thematic, because we tried to create an illusion, we were found out, and based on us being found out, they killed off one of the Blade individuals, and it ended up being Kalna. I also pulled card 155, which is a bunch of mercenaries, which are going to go in the dungeon deck discard pile. The mountain knows of a Khajiit who goes by the name of Carney. He met her at the new corner club in Windhelm. He says she used to receive lots of packages from a friend in Elden Root. We have two options here. We can choose to infiltrate the new corner club, pretending to be a skooma addict, or we can create a distraction at the club. Well, seeing as the distraction, the illusion I should say, from the prior one didn't pan out so hot, let's give the skooma addict thing a try. The prior quest card has now been removed, and that means the threat that was on it goes with it. So we no longer have any threat in play, which is great news. We now have a new quest card here, Undercover Addict, and this particular navigation point is telling us to point it to Windhelm. So I've moved one on the world map, the yellow one, to Windhelm, which is on the far east side of the board. Now that I've completed my one action, we take a look at where we are, and we are currently in a stronghold, which is Morthal, and at this point, if we are there, we can visit the market to buy, sell, craft, upgrade, or enchant items, and of course, we can try to buy resources if we want to as well. I don't currently have any gold to do so, or anything that really makes much sense around this. I could technically sell the plants in order to gain gold, but I'll hold on to the plants for now. The one thing to keep in mind is inside the rulebook on page 22, it gives a full breakdown of all the different aspects of each stronghold in terms of what's available to actually do within each of those strongholds. And a reminder of this is right on the game board itself. It has iconography that relates to the card decks that you can go after if you want to purchase from those specific decks, or the cost to gain resources of particular types you're after. When you're talking about strongholds, always keep an eye about this area right here, which will give you a great heads up based on threat tokens you've placed on this board, letting you know if something's unstable, you no longer have access to the market there. And if it gets to the point of being closed, then you need to spend money to gain access privately. And worst case, if all three are filled, well, things are at a rioting spot, and in that situation, you're adding threat every turn. At this point, we restore all players' health, but our health wasn't touched, so we have nothing to do there. We pass the starting player marker to the next player. In this case, we're just moving this over here to this upside down character card because we're playing solo, and we start a new turn. At the beginning of a turn, when playing solo and the first player marker is pointing towards the upside down character card, at the very beginning of the turn, there are two things to keep in mind. And it's very easy because these are the first two things you would normally go through if the first player marker was actually above your character card. So in this situation, when it hits this card, the first thing you would normally do is draw an event card. You're not going to. You're going to skip past this when the marker is on this upside down card. So that's a nice break. And the second thing is, if it refers, and that is the special rules for the chapter, that any roaming monster would move towards the starting player, they won't move. And that's all there is to it. We now get to move our allotment of up to 4. And I'm taking a look at the game board now, a little bit different than last turn where I could guaranteed reach the navigation marker on the world map. I can't get there. I don't have enough movement, which means I'm going to have to stop in a different location. So the question really is, do I want to take some winding path elsewhere to hit a specific icon? Do I want to check something out? Maybe show you guys something interesting? There's lots to see and do beyond just following those quest markers on the world map. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and kind of head that east direction, but I'm going to stop at a dungeon. And here's hoping that I don't regret that decision, but I think we're going to dive in there and see what we can find. Dungeons come in all shapes and sizes with different levels of difficulties and different chances of gaining some pretty cool stuff. The most basic dungeon is the one I just moved into, which is a cave. That icon you're seeing now. The other is a mine, which is right here. Another is a tomb, which you can see here. Or a ruin, which you can see right here. And finally, you can even find cities among the grounds. And there are some pretty cool things to be found across all of these, but again, a heightened sense of danger across the better ones. As you remember, we have a dungeon challenge card, which is specific to the campaign number and chapter we're currently in. You'll see all the icons I just talked about on the left-hand side. It will let you know what kind of enemies you're going to be walking through. Now, why would you want to go through a dungeon? Because they are a great source of treasure and experience. So we set ourselves up for a dungeon encounter here. We actually have two separate encounters. We know this because the legend on the card you just saw in the prior shot shows each of these, and you can think of them as almost being in separate rooms. There might be a time where you'll pull one up for a specific chapter and it'll show two icons within the same box on that legend card. And if you do see that, you're dealing with two enemies or maybe even more at the same time. In this case, we deal with the skeever first, which is the first one I revealed on the left-hand side. And then after that's done, we reset and go after the second one. So the skeever is the first one up. It shows on it if you have the ability to sneak or make a sneak check during combat, you can try to attempt it. And if you succeed at it, it will allow you to make any kind of a combat against it, except there's some exceptions around sneak. If you're wearing heavy armor, you're not allowed to perform the sneak. And also you can't use any spells as an attack when you succeed at a sneak. So in my case, seeing as spells is all I've got, attempting a sneak doesn't gain me anything. So we're going at this thing with regular combat rounds. The other thing to note is you've got a health track along the side here. It also relates, and you'll see as you go down through the numbers, eventually there'll be an icon. Sometimes there's more than one on the more complex enemies. It tells you whether or not it has a resistance to a certain type of attack, whether it is light armor, or light attacks, I should say, like this yellow one here. If it's red, it's for heavy attacks, and if it's purple, it's for magic. So in this case, we just take a cube and say this thing has 3 health, but it has 3 defense, or a very good defensive reaction to light attacks. The good news is my spells, I can primarily avoid that type of damage and put something on the skeever that it doesn't have a resistance to, which will ensure that the damage goes through and hits harder. Other things to note on the skeever card right here is that when it gets a chance to attack, it will roll a die, and if it lands an icon that matches, it's going to do that thing. In this case, it's going to bite, and then of course, if we kill this thing off, we gain an experience. Now, talking about killing off an enemy, if we do get to kill this thing off, we haven't leveled up yet. So we're currently just as low level as this level 0 skeever. So if we kill it, this thing goes back in the deck and we see it again in the future. If I happen to level up in the future to level 1 and then I see the skeever again and I kill it, the skeever is removed. Anything that has a lower level than you overall will never come back into the same enemy type deck again. So in this case, it'll never come back into the animal type deck. So in other words, those decks are always scaling based on your progress in the game. This is a card you're going to want to keep next to you when you're doing combat for the very first time. Walks you through all the steps. Again, I'm not doing the sneak portion. This is something only one player can do at the beginning of combat, but again, with restrictions of that individual can have heavy armor on and can't use a spell as a way to attack the enemy when doing a sneak. So because of that, skipping right past it, we're going into a regular combat round sequence. The very first step of a regular combat sequence is for players to use potions if they wish. I don't have any to use. Actually, I do have one. I shouldn't say that, but I don't want to use it. It's for replenishing my health, which I'm currently okay with. The next thing is you can spend an energy, which again, energy is a stat on your dashboard. You can drop it down by 1 to switch out equipped weapons. So if you come into a dungeon and you see an enemy like the skeever and you go, wow, it's resistant really well against light attacks. I have a light attack equipped in terms of the type of damage I can do. I really should put, a heavy battle axe on, for instance, and change to a red combat type, then you can do that for 1 energy. So that's your opportunity to do it. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to roll the enemy die to determine what the enemy is going to do. It's not going to actually resolve this roll, but we get an idea as to what it's going to do depending on whether or not it rolls one of the icons on its card. Does it? Yes, it does. So we know that this enemy is going to, in the future, if it's still alive, it's going to bite us. At this point, we get to choose what we want to do. We can choose to do an offensive action, we can choose to do a defensive action, or some kind of special action. You can see those across the cards. Looking at sparks or healing, you can see there's special actions like trying to restore health, whether it's for somebody else or for yourself, or you could do a shock or a burst type attack, but that's again using magic. Or at the very bottom, you have the ability to do some dodging as well, so that's on the defensive side of things. In this case, I'm going to be a bit aggressive, and we're going to try to go after sparks. I think this is a great one. Now, taking a look at the type of damage that this thing can do, if I do burst, the great thing is, it's a little bit tough because I have to land 2 identical icons to make it happen, but it's that good icon that's on 50% of the white dice in terms of odds, and it can let me choose between a light attack or a magic attack. That 2 next to the light symbol slash the magic symbol lets me choose where I want to put that damage. I'm going to put it in the magic side of the equation because that means it'll get straight through the resistance that the skeever has. So I've gone ahead and spent 2 magicka in order to do this attack, the burst attack. Now I'm going to go ahead and make a skill check. All right, let's see if we can do this. We need 2 of these icons right here. So let's see if fate is with us. And again, we're coming at this with magic, so it would go straight through to the skeever. No! Now what I can do if I want to go any further here is I can do what's called pushing. So what I can do is I can choose, if I'm doing a spell, to use an additional magicka in order to take another attempt with another die to try to push this thing through. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to drop myself down to the 2nd position here. And I should say the 2nd last position here for the magicka. And I'm going to bring another die into the fray. We're going to hope we get it. It's a 50-50 roll. So here's hoping we can pull this out. We do, and that is going to allow me to put 2 damage on the skeever, and because it's magic and it's not resistant against it, it's going to drop it down to 1. And I just want to point this out on the reference card because it is useful information to know that you can push spending 1 energy or 1 magicka, the trait that matches the selected action, for each additional die they roll, so you have options there. And if the player doesn't have enough stamina or magicka to pay, you can actually spend your health instead. So you can really start pushing yourself to the limit to try to pull it off. At this point, the skeever is going to attack back based on the icon it got, which is a bite. It's going to be 1 heavy damage coming at me. Unfortunately, due to my current loadout, the only armor I have here is only good, because of course it's ragged robes, against light attacks. It's no good against heavy attacks like the bite from the skeever, so I do take 1 hit, dropping myself down. A new combat round begins. I can choose again to use potions if I want, switch out equipment, all that good stuff. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead now and roll this die to see what this thing's going to do. Hopefully nothing. Nice. It got the bolt, which means it won't attack me at all at the end of this round, which is great. So we got 2 rounds to make this happen. Now this time around, I don't need to be as greedy, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to do a shock, which is just 1 magicka damage, and I only need this icon, which is the triangle, just 1 of them instead of the 2 I was going after before, so this is much wiser, so I'll drop myself down by 1 to pay for this, rolling 3 dice, looking for that triangle. All right, let's see if we can pull it off, take this thing out before it does any more damage to us, and oh yeah, we got it. That thing is dead, and at this point we gain 1 XP. So the skeever is going to net us 1 XP, which we place up here, and we're working our way up to 7. When we get to 7 XP, we can level up at the end of our turn. At this point, because we took out 1 of the enemies, and it was considered to be in its own room inside of the legend key, which showed 1 icon, we're going to be moving to the next room, but before we do, we get to replenish our magicka and our energy back up to full amounts. Our health stays as is. It is worth mentioning, though, that if your health is in really, really bad shape, you can use or consume a plant in order to use a potion in between combats in order to replenish your health. The final enemy in the dungeon is a mud crab, and this one comes with a resistance to heavy attacks, which makes thematic sense, seeing as it does have an outer shell, so a big hit may not impact it as much, but light, more methodical hits would do damage to it, and magic as well. Now, what happens if I actually make an attack that matches the damage type? I didn't do that on the skeever. That's the smart way to play, because you just rip through if you go after the weakness spots in terms of what things it doesn't have a resistance against. But what if you only have a heavy weapon? In this case, you're going up a mud crab. Well, when you make that attack with a heavy weapon, let's say it was a 3 damage attack, you take a look at where the cube currently is, and this is a heavy weapon resistance of 2. So 3 minus 2 is 1. So that 3 damage attack only gets through for 1. What's happening? You're essentially breaking down the armor of the enemy, but you're not progressing as fast as you would if you had to just use a light attack or you had to use magic. Of course, if you're only using a light attack or magic at 1, you would have got or netted the exact same difference here. So you'd really want to make sure you're netting at least 2 or more to make it worthwhile. Let's go ahead and roll the enemy die to see whether the enemy will hit me. This one only has 2 icons that will possibly do damage, and there's a blank, so that means this mud crab is useless. It's just running around in circles doing not much of anything. Again, just so you understand, across all of the enemy decks, there are 3 level 0 enemies on the top of all of them. So the first ones are very, very simple, and things get more complex quite quickly, and you will see that because you will actually have characters which will come into the fold, and they will have multiple resistance levels across different types. You might have something like this, which is pretty crazy because then you're, working off 2 cubes. You got to get rid of all of them in order to kill off the enemy. And there will be another icon for light attacks up here as well as the heavy one down here. So just really cool how it kind of changes over time and again scales as you go through the game and level up. Let's go into this attack quite aggressively. We're going to go ahead and try and do a burst attack. So we're going to go ahead and drop this down by 2 and make our skill check. Let's see if we get the 2 icons that we need in order to land this hit and kill it. Oh yeah, we didn't even have to push at all. That is enough. This mud crab is dead. That's going to do it. Our sequence of combats is now over. We gain an XP thanks to the mud crab. We're up to 2. We need 7 to level up, as I mentioned before. And now, instead of just replenishing the magicka and the energy tracks, we're also going to be replenishing the health track, going all the way up to the top as well, because we're now done our dungeon encounter. We did our dungeon exploration action and we completed a dungeon by taking out everything required within the dungeon we were in based on the legend. And so because of this, beyond just what's on the cards, which can be XP or potentially gold or other things, you're also guaranteed to get something from the equipment deck based on the highest level enemy you took out. In my case, I'm just dealing with low level enemies to start things out. So it's just these zeros here. So zeros where I'm at. If you have a level 3 or lower in terms of your highest enemy that you've taken out, then you're going to gain an equipment card from the B deck. This will be nice because it should be better than the equipment cards you saw from the very beginning. Those were the starting equipment cards. This B deck is kind of at the bronze level. And then the advanced or A level is if you have a level beyond 3, so 4 or higher. And when I'm referring to level, I'm always referring to the level of the highest enemy that you killed, not your current level in terms of which deck you're going to be pulling from when you get loot. I got myself the Silver Amethyst Ring, which is a pretty good one because it's worth a lot. It also has the ability to be enchanted, which I have not gone down the path of doing so far in this playthrough. But if you want to do it, as long as you have the resources to spend, which in this case are soul gems, if I could actually get a couple of those, then I could enchant this in a location that allows for it, and that will allow me to use a card like this that's called enchantment or upgrade, and I'll be able to place it on the card itself in order to enhance what it can do for me. It might give me a bonus to something. In this case, this one says fortify stamina regeneration. When resting, you gain an additional stamina, so a good thing to have. And then the opposite thing you can see on these particular cards is, and this would relate more so to weapons, are upgrades, where you can actually attach these and you put it off to the side of the card. So let's pretend like this was a battle axe, for instance, and it would sit like this and tell you that going forward, when you make those top 2 attacks, you now have a +1 on top of it. The last thing we do at the end of our turn is see whether we can level up. We can't because we currently don't have 7 XP, but we're working our way up. And now we're going to go ahead and move this marker over here, which means when we go into the next turn, we are pulling an event card. The event card I pulled off the top of the deck was a world quest. You know this by the banner that's underneath. Remember, there's 3 different types of events you can get. You can get one that resolves instantly. You can have an active one, or basically one that sits in play until another one bumps it out. Or you can have a world quest. And when it's a world quest, you move it from the event area over to the world quest side of the board. And I've got it sitting right here. You'll see that threat can be placed on it. And we're going to go ahead and read it. There's also some things we need to do. It says, the Sky Forge lies dormant. Still, you can forge some weapons with it. We have 2 threat we need to place, and this is going to tie us to Whiterun. In order to tie this world quest out to the world map, I've gone ahead and placed a blue marker here, and I've got one out in Whiterun on the world map as well. It's worth taking a look because you'll see we have to place 2 threat, and this is not telling us where to place it. So for the first time in the game, we're able to decide where we want to place the threat. I could place it on quest cards. I could place it on strongholds. Of course, that's going to have immediate impacts. Something else to make note of is that you'll see right here, if we get 2 or more threat on this card, we have to resolve the fail condition of the card, which says we degrade Whiterun, and we discard this card, it would be done. However, we can try to go down the success side of this as well if we can get to Whiterun and then use the Forge. Whiterun is actually really close to where I currently am, just like Windhelm is. So really, my main quest is, 2 spaces away from where I'm at, and this one here is 3. So technically, I'm between both. I could do either, so we might as well head here. So that's why I'm placing one of the 2 threat here, because if I place another one, well, this whole thing goes down a negative path. I know I can resolve this turn and get rid of that threat. So that kind of mitigates one of the threat. The other threat, I don't want to place on a stronghold just yet, so I'll place it on my main quest. We've got lots of allowance there. Taking a look at the world map, you can see the 2 different areas I have marked. So this is the world quest. The yellow one over there is my main quest. that world quest that showed up, I'm kind of interested in doing because it has the ability to give me a +1 advanced equipped item, which I really like to have. So I'm going to head in that direction. Now that I've arrived in Whiterun, I'm going to go ahead and interact at the stronghold there first before I resolve my quest action. As I'm inside of a stronghold at the market, I'm going to choose to sell the silver amethyst ring that I just got from the dungeon. I'm going to get 8 gold from it. I get exactly what's on the card itself. So I've got my 8 gold right here. And this works out really well, and I'll show you why in a moment. So this is going to go away. And the next thing to mention is I want to purchase some things. Now, taking a look at the world quest and what I'm going to be able to use in order to push to try to be successful at it, I need to purchase some coal or some ore. And as you can see, way up there in Whiterun, at the far end of the row, you'll see a 4 next to the 3 different types of resources, kind of all in a pie circle. That means for 4 gold, I can purchase any resource. I'm going to buy 2 of the ore. And now we're going to resolve our action, which is a quest action in the location I'm in. And I'm doing all of that because I'm getting ready for any kind of push action I might need to do to be successful at this. So I'm going in with 3 white dice. In order to be successful, I need 3 of a side that's very common, but I need 3 of them. So I'm almost guaranteed I'm going to need to push at least once, if not twice. And of course, this could still go south. It's a massive risk. Not only did I throw my ring away and sell it and got money for it, I'm going to be burning this ore in order to try to make this work. So I hope it's worth it in the end. Let's see how it goes. And of course, if I had the smithing, I'd be able to bump this up even further, but I do not. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so we got 2. We got 2 off the hop. And this is what I was hoping for, like a relatively positive result to start. Now, if I get really lucky, again, these are 50-50 rolls now. So I'm spending 1. This is essentially expending 4 gold because that's how much it cost me. So that's gone down the drain. Come on, give it to me right off the hop so I don't have to spend both. I don't want a nerve-wracking last roll. Yes, we got it. All right, so 3 successes means we get to draw 1 card off the top of the A deck, the advanced item deck. Well, my friends, that was 100% worth it. I got myself an Orcish greatsword. This thing looks awesome. It uses stamina in order to use it. We got swing, we have slash, we have parry. It's going to require some good rolls, but it can do some serious damage across a couple different damage types, whether it's heavy or light, and the parry defense there in there as well. Plus, technically, the cost, or I should say the selling price of this, essentially makes this all worthwhile because I spent 8 in order to, I sold my ring to get 8 in order to get 2 ore, and I still have an ore, but now I have another item that's 8. So this kind of switch, like a ring for what I just have now, I'm quite happy with all this. Now, this is something else about world quests that are really cool is based on what I just did. It's telling me now to shuffle 150, card 150, which is this one right here, with the top 4 cards of the event deck and then discard this card. So essentially, by progressing this specific quest, something else that's tied to it is going to be coming up in the near future. Again, this is how things that you do within the world have a continuing ripple effect very closely to when you did them. And that event card we just resolved is now out of the game, and that also means the threat that was on it is gone as well. So we mitigated things on top of it. So a lot of good things there. That's going to do it for that turn. We're going to move the starting player marker over to this, and we don't have to pull an event this time around, so we can jump right into moving. So I have my eye on getting back on track with the main quest, which is over here in Windhelm, but I'm not going to be able to get there. It's going to take 5 movement. I don't have a horse. That's the only thing that would generate me enough movement to get there in 1 move. But the best I can do, and I can actually stop in a number of different locations around Windhelm, but the one I'm thinking about stopping in would be this wilderness spot here. I'll show you what that's all about. This time while heading through the forest, we ran into a giant. We have a giant attack, nomad giant to be exact, and they roam the lands displaced by other creatures, and we have to clear card 369. So we have this individual to deal with. Well, my friends, a giant is not an easy foe to take down, and this time around, this thing has defense against both things that my Orcish greatsword can throw at it. The only advantage that I have in this situation is that I now have a different type of weapon, which allows me to actually do a sneak and make an attack, so long as I'm successful, of course, on the actual sneak attempt. So I'm going to do it, swing my Orcish greatsword, see if I can put some kind of dent in this thing, although it's going to be really minor. I'll probably just be hitting its red here to maybe knock it down a step. And then we're going to have to potentially switch it up and start using magical spells to really start displacing this thing and dropping the damage. It's going to be quite a fight. So we're going in with a sneak attempt here. We need 2 of these icons to be successful. I normally have 3, but I do have 1 extra sneak die off my ragged robes because I blend in so nicely, looking like a bag of potatoes. So we're gonna go ahead and roll these off and hope we get the 2 we need in order to land a sneak attack, which could help us a little bit. And we did. We got the sneak attack. So we can choose an attack we want to make against this thing. And taking a look at my Orcish Greatsword, which I am wielding right now, I'm going to throw, I believe the best one I can pull off right here for free from a sneak attack would be this 5 combat. So again, because it has a resistance of 4 for the heavy weapons, 5 minus 4 is 1, so it only knocks down or chinks his armor just a little bit. And it's not really his armor because he's a giant, but it doesn't get through him as well as I'd like, but it does lower his resistance level overall. So if I continued with this, it would help me out a little bit. The thing is, I'm not going to. The only reason I even use this was because it's the only weapon that I'm allowed to use as part of a sneak attack off the hop. I am quickly going to go ahead and do a swap out for my spellcasting abilities. Starting a typical round of combat, we're going to go ahead. First thing I'm doing is not using any potions, but I am going to drop down my energy by 1 to swap out my Orcish Greatsword for my spells. With that swapped out, we're now going to go ahead and roll the enemy die to determine if the enemy is going to hit me. There are only 2 sides on the die off the 6 that we have that will allow me to get a break. So odds are not in my favor here that it's going to miss me. And actually it lands one of the 4 that is going to hurt me big time. Yikes, this one's called Crush. This individual is not messing around. Most of the time, it's going to land the Crush attack, which is doing 7 heavy attack damage towards me, which is ridiculous. We are going to need to dodge this. All right, so we're going to go ahead and spend 1 of our stamina here in order to do a dodge. We use a triangle from either of these will give us that dodge ability, which will have us not get hit by this gigantic thing. So let's see how we do. We do get it, so we did dodge. Now this is going to be a lot of cat and mouse, and I'm hoping that on this next turn here, which I'm about to roll for the enemy die, that we get one of the 2 sides where he won't be hitting me. So let's see how this goes. Yes, we got a blank. Thank goodness. Okay, so because of this, we do have an opportunity to actually put damage on because we're not focused on dodging. So I'm going to go ahead and spend 2 magicka in order to do a burst here with my sparks. So it's going to drop me down to here. We're going to roll these 3 dice and we're going to see if we get the 2 icons we need from burst in order for this to land. We do. So that's going to be 2 damage going straight through. He has no resistance to magic. All right, I got myself a plan strategy-wise. I think I can pull this off. We'll see how it goes. So what I'm going to do is put 2 damage straight through on this one here, getting it almost to the point of being knocked off completely. In order to kill off the giant, both of these cubes need to go all the way down to nothing. But remember, the overall strategy is if you can reduce an overall attack type resistance all the way down and off, then you're going to be able to have an easier time going after the one that's higher up. So in other words, magic and heavy weapons will start to make an impact on the yellow. So it's a game of kind of going back and forth between your weapons to find times when it makes the most sense to go all in. So at this point, the giant has been hit. Pretty happy with this. We're going to have to roll the die to determine what happens next. And again, I'm hoping that this is going to be a miss on the giant's part because the attack that would have happened right now is a miss. It was a blank. What's going to happen for this upcoming combat round? It's another blank. That is awesome. I'm going to go ahead and spend 1 magicka in order to do a shock attack here. We need just a triangle to make this work. Let's go ahead and roll 3 dice and see if we get what we need. Yes. Oh, no, we didn't. We didn't get what we need. That is a diamond. So what I'm going to have to do here is potentially look at pushing. I'm going to go ahead and use 1 magicka to bring another die into the fray, hoping I can get what I need here. This is a bit sketch. The triangles only appear on 2 sides of the die, so not feeling too confident about this. Come on. No. Okay, that's not good. I need this to go through to clear it so that I can actually make a big time attack. Oh, this is brutal. I'm going to go ahead and do it again. I'm going to burn all my magicka down to pretty much nothing. We're going to go for it one more time. Yes. Oh, finally. Okay, so that is going to be the 1 damage we need to knock off the red cube. All right, the doors are open. We're going to go ahead and remove this cube. We now only have light attacks that it's resistant against, and it's the only one we need to focus on. So we're going to use everything else in our power to bring that down. I'm going to use 1 stamina right now in order to swap out my 2 potions and bring in my Orcish Greatsword. We're all set and ready to go. Let's go ahead and roll the enemy die to see what it's going to do. Hopefully not a bad thing. Oh, look at that. We got ourselves a safe roll. This or the blank side were the only two sides where it wouldn't hit us. So we're lined up for a good hit. I'm going to choose to do the slash attack, which is going to be 2 stamina, dropping me down. And then this right here tells us we need to get 2 of these on the die roll, which is going to be tough, but it is absolutely possible. We've seen it done before. This will be a huge hit if we can get this through. It won't kill it, but it'll put it right on the doorstep. Oh, what an epic roll. That is going to be 5 damage straight through. The giant didn't see that coming. It's dropping from 6 all the way down to 1 as a heavy attack is now easier to get through. The stress levels on this are beyond belief because I'm taking on something that I don't think I'm even prepared to do at this point, because if it lands so much as one of these decent attacks on me, I'm screwed. As of right now, my magicka and my stamina are all the way down to nothing. It's only my health that can take me out of this combat if I get down to the final blow position and things of that nature. My health's been fine because I've been able to dodge and also gotten some really good rolls so far from the giant. Here's the problem. Going into the next round, I have to choose whether I'm going to act or not. In other words, I have to decide, am I part of the combat here or am I resting? If I choose to rest, I can replenish some back in order to get some energy in order to make kind of a last ditch attack. That would be good. So if I go ahead and make that rest, the only downside is I'm wide open for attacks on that round and I have no ability to dodge, which means if it rolls right after I decide to rest, a result that lands one of these icons, I'm in big trouble, especially if it rolls to 7. So I'm choosing to rest at the start of this round, which is going to allow me to bring back 2 stamina and 2 magicka, which is enough to do what I need to do. The problem is I got to sit tight and do nothing on this turn. I'm wide open to attacks. I'm rolling the enemy attack die right now, and based on the last roll, which was a good one, if I get that again, I'm happy. If I happen to get the blank side, that one, I'm happy. Anything else is going to put me in a bad position. So odds are not in my favor, but I'm going to risk it. Let's see how this plans out. If I get a blank or that fire icon, I'm going to take this giant down. Come on, make it happen. No, that is not good. That's going to be a bolt. That is going to be the crush attack. So as I was resting, we have 7 heavy damage coming my way from that crushing blow from the giant. Now here, my friends, is the only saving grace that you have inside of Skyrim, and that is called the final blow. No matter how much damage you take when you go down the track on your HP, when you hit the final blow location, all damage stops at that point. This is the ace up your sleeve when you're in combat. This will stop you like a threshold from being taken out by an overwhelming hit like what just happened. So in this particular case, by resting, it was absolutely worth it, but also extremely painful at the same time, but we're not out yet. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to spend 1 energy in order to swap out my equipment. So the Orcish Greatsword's going away. I don't want to have to spend my only stamina completely all the way down to nothing and hope for high results off the die rolls, even though they're big time impacts from one of them, the red one especially. I'd rather actually swap it for 1 stamina, swap back to my spells and make a roll against a simple magic triangle icon and go after that and still have the ability to pull another die in if I need to push. I think that's a smarter idea. Now that I've swapped everything around, we're going to go ahead and roll the red die to see what the giant is doing. Let's see if I get a break or I'm in trouble at the end of this. Okay, I get a break. I'm pretty happy with this. So that's exactly what I was hoping for. So regardless, if I have a really poor roll here trying to take it out, I've got a round to breathe, which is good because I am really not doing so well right now on the health side of things. So we're going to go ahead right now and we're going to pay the 1 magicka, bringing this down in order to do a shock attack. We're rolling 3 dice. I do have the ability to go ahead and use the last position for magicka and the last position for energy to re-roll, or to basically, I should say, push dice into the equation to try to succeed. So we should be able to do this, knock on wood, which I don't have in front of me. Oh my gosh, and I probably jinxed myself. So that is not going to help me. So what we're going to do is we're going to use stamina first here to push 1 more time. Come on, give me that. Oh my gosh. What is happening? Okay, we're going to push this one all the way to the very end. Can we get the triangle to take the troll, or I should say the giant, down? Yes! What an epic ending. Absolutely crushed it. And that, my friends, is what you call a success. So the giant goes down as we take it out. It was swinging at us like crazy and only connected on one hit. And when it did, took us right to our final blow. But we managed to take it out before it could take us down with a second hit. And because of that, we gain 3 XP. This ends up being a huge boost to us overall. We're going up from 2 to 5. After a complete combat counter is resolved, all of our stats go back up to full. It's also worth mentioning at the beginning of any round of combat on your player's turn, you can decide to try and escape. There is a penalty for this. The player has to add a threat token to any card that can accept them or to any stronghold in the stronghold chart. So that is the con of escaping. Yes, you can do it in situations where you don't want to be taken down, but if you do, there's going to be a ripple effect. The final thing I'll mention around combat is if you have your token on the final blow position like I did and I was to take another hit of damage which would have knocked me into this position here, it's considered a critical injury. When you run into this, meaning that you've lost all of your health, the player that's been critically injured has to draw an event card, resolve it, then that player takes as many threat tokens as the number of players, so if you're playing solo, it's just 1, and distributes it between any cards that accept them or between any strongholds in the stronghold chart at the top right of the game board. So it's just, again, going to press on you more and more threat. And of course, if you're the only character remaining in a combat and you get to this position, that combat encounter immediately ends. The first player marker is going to move to my character, meaning we're going to pull an event card. This is an immediate event. It says we have an invasion going on. We're going to move 1 Daedra token toward the nearest stronghold. If it reaches the stronghold, we degrade it and remove the token. If there are no Daedra tokens on the board, we place one on a wilderness space. We get choice in where this goes, of course, and then we have to place 2 threat on top of it. I chose to place this enemy within range of me, so if I want to deal with it, I can still get to it. I could place it on any wilderness location, but I placed it in this lower southeast corner here, the rift area where Riften is in the far right-hand corner. So we'll place it there, and if we need to deal with it in the future, we'll head towards it. Other than that, we need to place 2 threat. I'm going to be a bit aggressive here and place both of my threat on the Uncover Attic card because that's exactly where I'm headed anyway. I'm not going to move my character, which only needs to move 1 space as I'm very close to Windhelm. Now that I've arrived, I'm simply going to resolve the quest. There's nothing else I'd like to do at this location or this stronghold. Taking a look at the undercover addict here, we have to try to break into the room. We're doing a lockpicking check here. I don't have any kind of skill that'll bump up lockpicking, unfortunately, so I'm rolling 3 white dice and I'm hoping for that triangle result. You saw how wonderful that went with the giant there where I almost barely made it. This time I don't get to push anything. There's no ability to push, so I don't always be there. But let's go ahead and roll and see if I can get it right off the hop. That would be nice. Yes, I just got it. So with the 1 result, we're going to get a successful side of this equation. It says, I slip in the room and close the door behind me. We gain 2 experience and we gain an advanced treasure, or advanced item, I should say, from the treasure deck. It says place 1 location marker next to Solitude. I placed a marker on Solitude, and I'm going to go ahead and flip one of these over to make it a 3, because I now have 7 XP, which is awesome, because at the end of my turn, I'm going to be able to level up. The room is in disarray, and Carney has documents, pieces of armor, and weapons scattered all over the place. I shuffle through them until I find a compromising letter. At this point, I'm grabbing 180, but when I looked inside the box, based on cards I was supposed to remove when playing solo, if you can't find the card number that's actually being called for because it was removed earlier in the game, you just keep going through the cards until you hit the next available number, and in this case, it's 183. It says the Thalmor. It says evidence card. Carney is definitely working for the Thalmor. The organization has no right to operate in Skyrim. The High King needs to know about this urgently. The objective here has now changed, so this card is going to go away, which means the threat is going to also go away, and it states to gather all players in Solitude and then flip all the evidence cards you have. So it looks like we've come to the end of chapter number 1, or we're getting very close to it. At the end of your turn, you take a look at your XP to see whether you have enough experience in order to level up. The current requirement is 7, and we have 7, so we'll go ahead and pay it in order to level up to our first level, which will then place any of the skill tokens available into this first position, which will then tell us how much experience points we need to get to the next. Here's an example of a number of the skills that you can learn within Skyrim, and you get to pick whichever one you want. I decided to go with the skill Illusion. I was actually going to go with Sneak, but this pulled me in because after learning Illusion, we automatically get this passive ability which says when casting illusion spells in combat, you can reroll the enemy die this combat round. That is a pretty cool ability. So glad we have that unlocked. And also in the future, if we ever try to go to the legendary level of a particular skill, then you'll see you just flip it over to the opposite side to see a more powerful version. And the final thing you get to do as part of leveling up, which is a really important one not to forget, and that is to move the goalpost or basically increase your maximum in a particular stat of your choice. You can choose health, stamina, or magicka, and you're going to take the arrow at the very end and move it one position to the right. So in this case, I decided to level up my stamina, increasing it by 1 at the same time. And at this point, you've now seen the flow of the game and how it operates, and of course, there is much, much more to discover as you continue your adventure inside of Skyrim, the adventure game. I highly recommend, if you're a solo player, that you check this one out. It is very intriguing, and once you get into it, and I mean just a handful of turns, the story will truly pull you in, and you'll want to know what happens next, and all those branching side quests certainly start tugging at you just like the original video game did. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up this game overview and gameplay video for the Elder Scrolls Skyrim from Modiphius. And again, if you have any thoughts around this one, for, against, or in between, let me know in the comments below. Would love to see your take on what you saw so far through this video, or even how your first impressions are going as you have the game in hand. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.